In the end, even if Sojiro had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Aoko, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected, he was putting up more of a resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing the House of Mirrors was a mistake. Yeah. Good, I guess? Good. It's good that he's somehow worming his way into living? She had really screwed the pooch on this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground. But seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. that mood. The moment Aoko's right arm began to glow, Sojiro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him. A strobing series of blue flashes lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed her prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life up the stairs. What kind of sadistic ass face? Oh my god. I guess not. In stark contrast to Sojiro's frenzied escape, Aoko walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set of distance. Yeah, wouldn't do to get too close and for him to turn around and tackle you, I guess. As she lacked confidence in her accuracy, the hardest thing for her to deal with would be if he charged right at her and went down fighting. But at a distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By the time her prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots and hit with at least 4 of them. Their positioning just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. At that distance, in a space that open, if he flanked and rushed her, there was a chance, however small, that it could turn into a fist fight. You know, even though you're trying to kill him, I for some reason get the feeling he's not a guy who would even try and fight. I don't know. Like, no matter who it was, I feel like he would always try and talk and then just get shot. Currently, Aoko's best weapon was the bullets from her right arm. If she was going to capitalize on that advantage, it was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there was a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and had lost the will to continue. Would she pierce his leg? Shoot him in the back? Or perhaps would he just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. Run, Forrest, run! On Sojiro's end, he could barely bite back when screaming as he bolted through the maze. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. Ow. The corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path had made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Ow. Don't tell me we're at a dead end. Clutching his head in his right arm, Sojiro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. Dodge? He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullets targeting his life. That was close. Urged on by the sound of approaching footsteps, he ran without thinking. That last one was close. A hair closer would have meant his life. He caught the odor of burnt hair from the back of his neck. Oh boy! He was very lucky. Or perhaps very unlucky. If you were actually lucky, he wouldn't be in the situation in the first place. Yeah, true. The second floor of the House of Mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It wound left, starting from the outside wall. Eventually, it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he would become, as though he were trapped in a twisted guillotine. I was just thinking about what he could do, but I realized it was a really dumb idea. I was like, oh, why didn't he said he went around a corner, right? Why didn't he just like stop and wait there? But no, she would obviously hear that his footsteps didn't move. It's like, and even if he like jogged in place, she would realize they weren't getting farther. So it's like, yeah. In fact, they'd be getting closer because she'd be, yeah. But yeah, it was a dumb idea. His stifled screams threatened to leak out his complaints. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggling merely served to prolong the inevitable. Yet he ran. No matter how many mirrored walls he rammed into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard that his forehead bled and he saw stars, he ran. Pain shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intensely he smashed into the invisible walls. His body began to understand this rule and begged him not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting at a couple hundred feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was way too crazy. This was all just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would apologize to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank. As his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again, his feet slowed as he began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke. But then he felt a chill. Not a joke, not a joke. A touch of death upon his neck. No, don't go to the light! It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojiro knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he had arrived in the city, he had come face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences. How? Right. For someone who didn't understand city life, his present predicament was not unlike when he experienced the traffic on the streets, or the commuter rush on the station platform. Oh, so he almost walked into traffic, or something, and was almost pushed off the station platform into the train's path, maybe? I don't know. He was far from an innocent babe unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known became relevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promises of safety, something urbanites took for granted, were threats unknown. Right. So he was used to this already. Though if he were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Like what? Things superfluous to necessity. This world was overflowing with valueless things, and they were all dangerous in some way. Yeah, I guess so. Even the everyday necessities sold at the convenience store were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Right? Hang on, I haven't had water for like 30 minutes. I need something to. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get water. Civilization had raised the standard of living so high that it had numbered humanity, or that it had numbed humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to a country boy like Sojiro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. that it was possible for such conveniences to easily and suddenly be misused and cause unintended accidents had always made him anxious. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. Interesting. Convenience makes him wonder as to why he exists. That's an odd thought. To be honest, I don't think I've ever. I don't know. How ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, what he'd failed to understand until now. He'd always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came at a price. Being alive meant that the opposite was always lurking around the corner. It was just like a streetlight at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whizzed mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind the charred remains of someone at the hands of that blue flame 2 nights prior. Somehow, this situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling carrot. For now, he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky visible through the skylight was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. And managed to calm himself. Sojiro began to laugh in despair, as though something rather precious had been broken. Everything had become meaningless anyway. Even so, his legs somehow made their way forward at the sight of her reflection in the mirror. Like a game of cat and mouse, Sojiro fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. Then, after 4 minutes, that strangely unreal tension ended. She ran out? The 9th shot of blue light hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojiro into the opposite wall. Of all the fire he had taken thus far, this shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He was not bleeding, and was lucky he could still even scream. Yet, his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. The pain was not so bad that it was preventing him from standing up. It was just that there was a skylight above him, and he could glimpse the dark of the night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was a raw, selfish bout of grief. It was just so cruel to have to stare at that for the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojiro's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purposes, he had given up. He had given up running away from the sound of pursuing footsteps, and perhaps even the problem at the root of everything. I don't think that's what I would be thinking in your situation, buddy, but okay, you do you. Sojiro Shizuki felt things that in any other circumstance he would never feel. Incidentally, without exaggeration or embellishment, this was the only mistake he'd ever made in his life. I highly doubt that, but okay. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojiro listened as the footsteps drew nearer.
Give up?
Yeah, I guess. It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he had really given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark, mirror-lined corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojiro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
返事がないならそれでいいけど。
Okay.
調子狂うわ。普通どうして殺そうとするのかぐらい聞くものじゃない？
Yeah, that's a good point. But I feel like he's not. I feel like he gets it though. I feel like he at least understands. Like, oh, he saw something he wasn't supposed to. Like he already figured out that you were the one who killed, quote unquote, that thing in the park the other night. So, Aoko spoke from within the shadows. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that would have been the obvious question to ask. Yeah. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret, but it was human nature to want to know more.
そっか。それはそうなるな。
Yeah. A simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and a forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before.
でも言う必要はない。
Okay.
聞きたくないんだ。そういうのは。
I guess it doesn't matter to him. Why? Just... Okay. He responded in a mature, subdued voice. His response was clear, rather gallantly so.
そう。じゃ、殺すけど。死ぬの怖くないの？
Apparently not.
怖いに決まってる。何より痛そうだ。
His face turned awry as he objected, to which Aoko frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
そりゃ怖いでしょ。私だって怖いと思うし。
Okay, why the heartfelt conversation right before you kill him?
でも悪いわね。我慢して。
Couldn't you at least like put it through his head, get it over with quickly?
人でなしと罵ってくれて結構よ。今の私は本当にその通りだから。そういった意味じゃあんたと同じ。普通の道徳がないのよ。だから必要なら人も殺せる。
Yeah. I guess not having normal morals would help. Sojiro's finger twitched in response to her indifferent tone. As if to say that, despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide.
人殺しなんて良くないぞ。
Yeah, we've established that.
分かってるって言ってるでしょ。
Aoko raised her right hand. The light from the crest illuminated her face. It goes without saying that her expression was unchanged. She wasn't crying, nor was she smiling. She was a young woman who'd excised her feelings. Deal with it was another thing Sojiro could not let slide. Sojiro could read on Aoko's face that she was not herself. She was in pain, and to a degree he had never seen in her. And to a degree he had never seen in her.
ちょっといいかな。
何？ここまで悲壮感を盛り上げておいて、やっぱり逃げるなんてのは却下よ。
I don't think that's what he's doing. He unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless counter and breathed a sigh of relief. He had misread the pain he saw on her face. This was the same Aoko. Sojiro laughed out loud in genuine joy, a laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
遺言でも聞いてあげようと思った私が甘かった。
Give him a minute.
っていうか、今の小バカにした笑いがあんたの遺言ってことで OK？
いや、そうじゃなくて、あそこにいる人は青崎の友人なのか？
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Out of nowhere, she probably thinks he's trying to fuck with her to get her to turn around. But no, I think he's being serious. Out of nowhere, Sojiro pointed behind Aoko.
はあ?
Yeah, she doesn't believe. She doesn't believe shit. She's like, the fuck do you? What are you trying to do here? Aoko thought that it must have been that old, overused distraction technique. If this had been a Japanese comedy act, this would be the part where she gave him a whack with a paper fan. But after giving it a second thought, she realized Sojiro didn't have the capacity for understanding old or even new tricks.
あんた、何言って。
Y'all see the reflection in the mirror between their two heads? It's another mannequin. Perhaps his honest disposition had been to his benefit. Yeah, I guess so. Without thinking, Aoko gave into her curiosity and turned her gaze toward the direction in which his finger was pointed. And there, something that should not have been there in the maze. Something with a creaking, wooden smile. It was the ominous, creepy, uncanny figure of a girl. Yeah. An unusual figure with 2 arms and 2 legs stood silently in the darkness. If only for a moment its beauty, which was even apparent from afar, dulled the insanity of the current situation. What is that Nintendo game? The fighting one? With the extendo arms? I guess it's, we know where it got inspiration from. Extend. The utterly unknown threat made Aoko freeze on the spot. Avoiding it didn't even occur to her. Humans possess intelligence and knowledge, but when confronted with the unknown, they fail to process what to do and... Ow? You know, honestly, for a second, I thought Sojiro was gonna push her out of the way. But I guess not. A shriek escaped Aoko's mouth. The magical attack crossed the 30-foot gap in an instant. The arm of the girl who had appeared at the rear of the corridor was slender and quick. It extended to a near impossible length, striking Aoko from behind. Aoko crashed into the wall. She fought back in an anguished whimper. The attacker retracted her arm.
Aozaki!
Sojiro sprang to his feet. He darted to her side and used all the strength he could muster to get her to her feet. You were quite nice of you for someone who just tried to kill you. But, you know, I guess in a situation, you might both end up dead, so... He couldn't believe how light she was. In Sojiro's mind, Aoko was an extraordinary individual. What? So she has to have an extraordinary weight too? Shake my head. He'd expected that if he were to ever touch her, it would be apparent she was far stronger than he. But in reality, she felt about as heavy as you would expect a 100-pound girl to feel. Yeah, I mean, she spends most of her time studying magic, I assume, and doing paperwork. So, she's probably not that physically fit. I mean, obviously she's fit enough to chase him through a maze, obviously, but like, not like that. You know what I mean? Not like super physically strong. Like, she doesn't do anything to like, yeah. Okay, but why is it kind of hot though? Like, I'm sorry, I can't be the only one who thought this when we saw this for the first time. Why is it hot? I'm sorry. Why is the mannequin hot? Like, bro, like, come on. Fucking tight moon out here. I see you, Nasu. No. Who's the artist? Takeuchi. I see you. Meanwhile, that thing continued to reel in its arm, as if it were some sort of mechanism. Having extended more than 30 feet from the elbow joint, it clanked as it returned to its previous shape and size. I low-key might have to censor that, I'm not gonna lie. I might have to censor that thing. Cause, at least the chest area, cause, you know YouTube. like, I don't know, man. Because he likes you as a person, even if you try to kill him? I don't know. Aoko tore her hand away from Sojiro's. Suddenly, she felt her knees buckle from under her, but Sojiro caught her before she could hit the ground and helped her to her feet. Sort of. He looked back at the eerie shadow 30 feet away as it finished retracting its arm. Aoko grabbed her lower back as she answered. Yeah, that probably hurts, huh? A searing pain shot through her. I mean, it's obviously magical of some sort, so the mannequin that is, so it stands to reason it probably has some sort of magic attacks that it can use in some way, shape, or form. Maybe? Aoko tried to steady her breathing as she assessed the damage done to her back. The pain was quick to fade and her breathing returned to normal. For the time being, her motor functions were no longer hindered, which meant that the real damage was elsewhere. Those eyes look very real, though. They could be glass, but I don't know. Blue light glowed across the gloom. The magical energy generated by her breathing was accumulating in her right arm. Generated by her breathing? Is that what her family's, like... Huh. I'll probably get that explained to me at some point. If magical energy was the fuel, the formula was the igniter. For Aoko, this was little more than a reenactment of 2 evenings ago. Next time the puppet extended its arm, Aoko would fire a magical bullet as fast as she could. A battle at approximately 30 feet. As long as Aoko could secure a 2-second window, she could create a counterattack to end their duel. It made its move. With its head tilted down, there was no expression to be seen, and in the darkness, its apparent age was impossible to make out. To the two humans, the puppet was not dissimilar to a faceless ghost. Its left arm slowly came up with a grinding sound. Its movements were dull as if the joints were rusty. The right arm, which had been extended earlier, hung at its side. Though the puppet's mouth was hidden by its long locks, the sense was that it was smiling.
さっきと用途が違う。あれが本命。しずきくん、どいて。
She threw herself into Sojiro and extended her hand. Its arm extended at that very moment. The timing was impeccable. In a single second, Aoko's magic bullet scored a direct hit on the opponent's arm, reversing its trajectory and sending it crashing into the puppet's body with a violent explosion. Or at least, that's what would have happened had the magic formula had been invoked. So why... Okay, it said she only used 9 shots before, right, when choosing Sojiro, so why could she not shoot there? Did it hitting her... Did it block maybe the mana, like, center, like the... I don't know. It must, when it hit her, it must have done something. She barely avoided being struck once again. When her magecraft failed her, intuition took over and she just managed to get away.
やられた。最初のはそういうことか。
She clenched her teeth in frustration, her thoughts racing a mile a minute. Fight or flight? Or was it only... It only had one arm left, which would take time to retract. This was the best shot Aoko had at defeating it. If she could evade the right arm just a fraction, she could get close enough to...
Vivo insomnia, solitare futuris inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus naturus dies. Teobeam.
That doesn't sound good. That does not sound good at all. Crackle echoed through the corridor. The poetic murmurs contained enough magical energy for a mage to perceive. The verse itself was Latin, but it contained hints of the language of curses, Gander. Originally, they were words meant to curse a hated adversary. However,
Mea animae mortalis, otem me futura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est. Teodi et te am, conveniamus insomnio ipse.
okay. The puppet was directing the words at itself. Curses beget curses. The victim calls down a curse on the assailant, creating a vicious cycle of negativity. The incantation was meant to do just that. However, this was ultimately a one-puppet show. An unprecedented source of power akin to auto-intoxication. As unbelievable as it seemed, the cycle of curses had been turned into a perpetual motion device. So it's powered like almost like a music box. It's like powers itself by cursing itself. Am I right about that, or am I getting that wrong? Because it...
何それ、レベル高すぎじゃない。
I don't know. I don't know. Aoko abandoned the idea of digging her heels in. It was time to flee with all due haste.
何してんの、あんたも来る。
I thought you wanted us dead! What? Okay. She grabbed Sojiro's hand and ran as fast as she could, deeper into the realm of mirrors. The crackling voice continued its murmuring behind them.
Proximi mich negligentes ferunt. Omnes nos peccantes fuimus. Et omnes nos edem fuimus. Omnes nos peccatores sumus. Venite domum meum. Lut simile somnium. Et pulvere simile quotidianum. Cor prego. Ti judico.
Okay. I'd rather death not be upon me, personally. I'd rather death stay as far away from me as possible, but... Okay. Alco fought against the pain in her back as she ran through the mirrored corridor. Those eyes definitely looked real, right? Well, as real as they can look in a, you know, anime-style visual novel. But... yeah. Alco, I already read that. She dragged Sojiro by the hand.
Aozaki, 傷は?
Probably not.
別に背骨が痺れてる程度よ。内臓は平気だし、出血もないみたい。
That's always good. And internal, not bleeding internally is always a good thing. She cursed inwardly at how much of a mess she felt, though. Unlike Sojiro, Aoko did not run into any transparent walls. Thanks not to superior sight, but rather preparation, she'd hammered the layout of the building into her memory. And still, though, the fact that you're not fucking up at all is still impressive. The fact, because you have to remember all of that, all the twists, all turns, every single one. Like, that's pretty impressive.
平気ってわかるのか?
Experience? I don't know.
そりゃ自分の体だもの。身体管理は基礎中の基礎よ。
Alco's matter-of-fact answer contrasted with Sojiro's nervous questioning. Yeah. The corridor grew shorter with each and every left turn. At first, they were able to advance in a straight line for about 100 feet at a time. But by now, they were forced to turn a corner every 50 feet or so.
あいつはあの夜の?
多分ね。同じタイプだと思う。貴重なオートマタを惜しげもなく使い捨てるなんて、よっぽどお金持ちなんだろうけど。
Yeah. Which makes me wonder what rich magi, whatever you want to call him, wants to, like, fuck with your city. He's like, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Sojiro furrowed his brows. He was grateful that she was answering his questions, but baffled by the strange words she was using.
青崎ストップ。もう随分走ったぞ。
Yeah, don't you want to get away from the fucking mannequin monster, right?
あいつは曲がり角一つ分向こうだ。少し休もう。
His words suggested that he was still concerned about her injuries. Alco shook her head in irritation.
あの距離を狙ってくる相手に通路一つ分のリードは無意味よ。せめて二つ分に行くまで走るの。
Sojiro nodded. With that matter settled, he asked,
なんで俺を連れて行ってるんだ?
That's what I was wondering, right? Like, she wants you dead. May as well let that thing kill you, you know? Like...
逃げられたくないからじゃない、バカ。
But what if it would have saved you the trouble? Answering curtly, Alco glared at her naive prey. The two of them headed for the next corner. Their legs began to slow as they rounded one more. Alco rubbed her back as she tried to catch her breath. Though Alco had insisted that she was fine, it appeared to have been bravado. Even the usually clueless Sojiro felt the desperation they were in. stood behind Aoko with his arms folded. Yeah, they do be folded. Well, they had a moment. He tried to make sense of everything. First, Aoko nearly killed him. True. Though he was saved at the last possible second, it was by the strange, stretchy woman Aoko had burned to ashes 2 nights prior. Also, sort of true. Different one, but yeah. He could barely make it out that night, but he considered it a her because it looked female. I already made my peace with what I said earlier. I won't go on about it anymore. The woman's attack wounded Aoko's back and forced her to flee. Aoko had taken Sojiro with her, claiming that the reason she did so was to prevent her prey from escaping. Okay. In other words...
青崎はまだ諦めてないんだ。
No. Nope.
当たり前よ。あんなやつ、仮に2体と半分始末しても、あんた用の余力は残せるわ。
Right. Of course. Her tone was sharp, but even Sojiro could see that she was struggling to stay confident. The damage to her body was too much to afford her any optimism. Still, the fury in her eyes refused to accept her circumstances.
中がところどころショートして、あの右腕は回路を混戦させるジャミングって。
I was right, it was like a jamming thing. Though the proper response would have been for her to tremble in fear, she did nothing but shake her fists in anger. The disruption of formulae was only supposed to work on absolute beginners. If it had been her roommate, the arm would have been repelled the instant it hit her and the attacker's circuits burned out, rather than her own. Attempting to establish a link to the magic circuits of another mage was like presenting your heart on a silver platter. It would be of no use in a battle against a superior mage. And yet her adversary had been designed to do just that. Coupled with the attacks on areas of Misaki under Aoko's jurisdiction these last few weeks, it was a clear statement from the enemy, who as of 2 days ago had revealed itself as a fellow mage. In other words, the puppets saw Aoko as no threat at all. Then why did they come after you? Or is it not after you, but after Sojiro?
敵ながら正確な判断だこと。
Or maybe it's just after Alice, but you need to be taken care of first. I don't know. While she was still angry, the whirlwind of emotions within her started to fade. Her face was that of a hunter, far beyond her years.
なんか俺の時より真剣だな。
Well, yeah.
まあね、あんたの時は遊びが入ってたし。
Right, of course you were. Y'all are bantering after you just tried to kill him, and you almost killed by the. Sojiro wasn't sure whether to be happy or sad at that.
わからないことだらけで何を聞いていいかわからないんだけど、一つだけいいか？
Yeah, go ahead. Aoko didn't respond. Her eyes were focused on the darkness before them. The silence was heavy and the darkness was like a noose closing in on them. But Sojiro continued in spite of her indifference.
青崎はあいつも殺すのか？
It's the... Okay, you know what? I think it might be alive, technically. I think... Or at some point it... I don't know, assuming I'm right that those eyes are like real human eyes that were implanted alongside maybe the brain into that mannequin. I don't know, but that's just conjecture on my part. I have no idea. So It's hard to say whether that's morally wrong or not. A silence fell over them. It was as if the gloom was pulling them in. No response. Their breathing was the only sound echoing in the dim corridor. There stood Sojiro, forcing her to confront her sins and the magician girl who continued to ignore him. They spent a few seconds, seemingly frozen in time.
そう。それがあなたのキーワードみたいね。
Yeah. I guess so. Aoko whispered in a lifeless tone. Her sigh was tinged with both resignation and contempt.
何
Bruh.
独り言よ、忘れて。それと、言っとくけど、あいつは人間じゃないわ。信じられないだろうけど、自分の意志で動く人形なの。この前のも、今のやつもね。
Sojiro nodded as he processed the information. I mean, just looking at it, I feel like anyone would have a hard time disputing that. Not only did he not doubt her story, but he seemed to have accepted it at face value.
なんか落ち着いてるわね、あなた。
まさかもう何が何だかわからないからあまり考えないことにしてるだけだ。
Probably for the best. It's probably for the best.
ただ人形に関しては別にどうということはない。
え、もしかして他でも自動人形を見たことあるとか？
ん？都会の人形ってああいうものじゃないのか
？Does he think all mannequins and like all the malls and like clothing store windows can do that? Sojiro, you are buddy. You are something. I don't know what, I still don't have a word for you yet, but you are something. She barely stopped herself from falling to her knees. Falling to my knees in the Walmart. Oh man. Of course. How could she have forgotten? She was dealing with a bona fide natural-born moron. Rude. As a student who transferred from the isolation of the mountains like an endangered species, his utter lack of common sense rendered anything but mere miraculous as mundane. I love him. I love him. he's the best. I like how between like Fate, Tsukihime, and this, right? They're all so different. like Shiki, right? He doesn't really give two fucks about anybody. Shiro cares maybe a little too much. And Sojiro, he cares, but he's dumb. He sort of cares, but not really. But like, yeah, not really. But he's just like, yeah, man. I don't even know. I don't know how to describe Sojiro, man. If automobiles were moving hunks of metal, then moving puppets were nothing to write home about. You know, that's a good point. Wait, that meant to him, the incident from the other night hadn't been extraordinary at all. He might have even assumed it was an everyday occurrence in the city.
まいった。いっぺん頭の中覗いてみたいっていうか、ほんと、ここまで来ると感心するわ。
Yeah, no, fair. I too am curious. But, rude. But yeah, no, that's, She made a good point though. Like she probably just could have left him be and it would have been fine.
調子が狂うのも当然だった。普通は私に襲われた時点でもっと違う反応をするはずなのに。化け物とかお化けとかさ。でもあなたにとってはそういうこともあるで済まされてたわけなんだ。なんかバカみたいね、私。
Yeah, fair. Her strained face returned to normal for a moment. It hit her. There had been another way to handle this without anyone getting hurt. But the damage had already been done. There were no do-overs in life, nor should there be. Her own mistaken assumptions sent that situation spiraling out of control. But now that Sojiro was involved, she had to make sure that her secret was safe with him. And that meant killing him? Even if there had been another better option, that ship had sailed, yep, killing him. Human relationships are ultimately driven by mutual misunderstandings. Like tapestries woven from mismatched intentions. But you clearly don't kill him, right? At least not for a while, I hope. Break time was over. There stood Aoko Awazaki and Sojiro Shizuki. The first idle conversation they had since first meeting had come to an end. Not that they had a choice in the matter. It was the jarring murmuring from around the corner that cut it short.
Nemo nus meminit, vidroit extinct est. Initio eraberamos dom brevimus dolores sunt. Nemo adiuvat.
The enemy was just around the corner, visible in the mirrors parallel to it.
悠長に話してる場合じゃないわね。とにかく今は距離を。
What? In contrast to Aoko's elegant blues, its lights were a malicious red.
感動値。
That's not good. There was a momentary flash of light before she even extended her arm. But the instant she saw the enemy, her dormant feelings erupted once more.
さっきから邪魔なのよ。
Oh? Oh, she could. Oh, her magic came back. That's good. She channeled all of her pent-up anger and shunted it into her right arm. The fog that filled the corridor was no magical weaving, but rather a barrier of raw energy. It was equivalent to setting blaze to 3 buckets of gasoline to create a wall of fire, in the hope it would stop an arrow in flight. It worked, I guess, though, right? If the puppet had attacked with its arm, it could have pierced such a wall easily, but because it had loose curses with no definite form, the wall of energy repelled the attack. While it was a huge waste of magical energy, it was the only means Aoko had to protect herself in that very moment. And Shizuki by extension. Unfortunately, its protection was reserved to Aoko alone. Sojiro held his hand to his mouth. Why do you look concerned? I thought you just said you still had to kill him. Or just came to the conclusion. Well, the curse had been weakened to the point where Aoko could no longer feel it. It had plenty of effect on Sojiro, who wasn't a mage. As if it understood this fact, the puppet turned its gaze from Aoko to the unanticipated human behind her.
こいつは関係ないでしょ。
You just came to the conclusion you still have to kill him! Like what? You might as well let that thing kill him! Enraged, she swung her arm forward once again. The blue light formed a wall to block the Ganda for a scant few seconds. Okay, it was the mirror. For a second I thought there was another one. It was enough of an opening to exploit. Just as Aoko was forming the wall, the puppet pointed its right arm at her face and...
関係あるみたいだから逃げるぞ。
Okay. Before the rocket of death could be fired, Sojiro scooped her up into his arms. I don't know how you're... She's probably like, how the fuck are you moving? How he mustered the strength to do so was a mystery, but he turned his back on the puppet and took off running. He was a nimble sprinter, resembling a deer leaping across obstacles. I mean, yeah, he grew up in the mountains. Mountains equals probably forest, so he got used to like jumping over tree roots and like shit, probably. I don't know. Sojiro rounded 2 more corners, ignored whatever complaints Aoka was making, and eventually stopped in the middle of the 2nd floor. He set her down.
よし、ここまで来れば少しは休めるな。
Sojiro's shoulders heaved as he caught his breath. As slight as she was, running while carrying someone else would make anyone winded. She looked up at him in incomprehension.
こんな体力あったのに、なんで?
Because he just gave up? I don't know. It made no sense to her. If he had the stamina to pick her up and run, surely he could have stood up and escaped when he had been downed earlier.
ああ、あの時は諦めてたから。
But he's not giving up now, at least. I don't know why I said that. That was dumb. His words were unfiltered as ever. Though in this moment, fighting for their lives, he lacked some of his usual absent-mindedness. Yeah, in a fight for your life, you probably become pretty sharp.
諦めてたってどうして?
さあ、忘れた、そんなことは。
Though it may have turned away because he regretted saying it aloud, his words spoke volumes. For some reason, it pained Aoko to see him like that. Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh.
それより青崎、唐突に気分が悪いんだが。
Yeah, that would be the gander.
あの赤い光も、その。
ええ、魔術の類よ。ガンド打ちって言ってね。北欧の呪詛の一つ。魔術回路のある私には効かないけど、抵抗のないあなたには効果てきめんみたいね。
なんだ、青崎には効かないのか。じゃあ、危ないのはあの腕だけだな。
I would... Well, okay, yeah. Haoko had no idea why he was relieved, but she gritted her teeth and fought down the urge to snap at him. There was no use in yelling at a time like this. Above all, she felt it would have been petty in the extreme to voice her annoyance right now.
そうね。注意するのは伸ばしてくる腕だけ。大した相手じゃないわ、やっぱり。
This time it wasn't false bravado. I mean, you're assuming those are the only things it has in its arsenal. For all you know, it could have another attack. Such an enemy would normally be a breeze for Aoko Awazaki. But her shameful negligence had led to the disruption of her magic circuits, making her even less formidable than her enemy. At this point, Aoko had no way of attacking. The only option left to her was to wait for it to expend all of its magical energy, but its perpetual curse mechanism made that a non-starter. Perpetual curse mechanism. This game of tag would not end until one of them was dead. She realized that she was in the same position she had cornered Sojiro in earlier. Yeah, a bit ironic, huh? She glanced at her right arm. She couldn't imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her bachelor. Sorry. When I talk a lot, my nose gets stuffy and yeah. She could not imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her magical energy at more than half of its capacity. This had to be karma for having enjoyed toying with Sojiro earlier. Yeah,
呆れた。
you can't deserve it.
いるところにはいるものね。
Karmic justice and all. She grumbled under her breath as she shifted her focus. She had the fuel for the fire, but not the igniter. And that killing machine would chase her until the end of time if need be. What she should do next was blindingly clear. She had to get back to normal.
青崎。
ごめん、考え事してた。確か。よし、合ってる。しずきくん、そこに横道あるのわかる？
Aoko pointed, but he could see nothing but the walls of the corridor. For one thing, the floor had nothing but left turns, and Aoko was pointing to the right.
2階は中心まで行くと1階に降りる階段があるんだけど、それは私が壊したから使えないの。
Okay.
けど、ここの作りも意地が悪くてね。よく見れば、右に曲がる通路もあるのよ。上級者だけにわかる抜け道ってやつ。
So you're a hardcore fan of the Magic Mirror? Or Hall of Magic... House of Mirrors.
あとは注意して探せば、1階の階段までショートカットできる。悪いけど、一人で行って。
I don't think he'll do that. I'm be honest, I don't think Sojiro would leave you. Aoko turned her back to Sojiro and started walking. Walking in the opposite direction of the escape route and down the long corridor toward the puppet in pursuit.
あいつは無差別だから、ここで壊さないといけない。魔術師は魔術師同士で争うのはいいんだけど、ミラリンの一般人に手を出しちゃいけないって決まりがあるの。あいつの目的は私のわけだし、結果がどうあれ、すっきりするでしょ。
I think he would disagree. If Aoko won, the puppet would be destroyed. If Aoko lost, its objective would be complete and it would shut down. Hope, maybe it would shut down. You don't know that. Not for sure. Either way, them going their separate ways would mean Sojiro survived. This is what Aoko meant. Though she explained it as if the events were happening to two totally different people.
運が良ければ入り口までたどり着けるわ。それじゃあ、また明日ね。
He's not gonna let that fly. And okay. Okay, she's gone. Even Sojiro could tell she was just trying to act tough. But she'd already disappeared around the corner by the time he thought to stop her.